we really need this parking back, non-restaurant.
But even the one short term right now, right?
Yeah, and we're talking about till May 17th.
We are talking about until the Sunday after the last graduation, yes.
Well, I want to make a motion that we approve it for those 3 parking spots.
Okay, all right, yes, sir.
So I know they have the 2021 graduation on Monday and the 2020.
That's after the second one.
That's after the second.
That's the second.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't get the dates on those.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's the same date that all the outdoor dining will be picked up as well. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, behind City Hall, we have a gorgeous new mural that you can't see if anybody parks up against it. And so we are requesting that those 4 spots be not lined anymore so that people can stand there to get their picture made in front of the mural.
So moved.
But we are going to look at doing a structure too.
We would like to, but we didn't budget for it this year, to paint that concrete a different color in front of it or something that makes it obvious to stand there to get your picture made, but we didn't budget for that, so we'll talk about that in our next, okay?
One of the appellants, 65 appellants, to the special exception and variance that's being requested by Waffle House. I've got a few handouts.
Okay, you can just take one and we'll
Just-
pass them around if you want to just, you can put a few down there.
One more.
We're good.
After the Planning Commission voted and approved a special exception and the variance for Waffle House, a number of people in Oxford Commons became upset and thought that this was not the best thing for our neighborhood, not only from a public safety issue, from increased traffic and dangerous situations for pedestrians as well. 65 people approved or voted to challenge this and bring it to the Board of Aldermen. I think all of you have probably seen the 80-page appellate document. I don't know if it's in your
It is, we have it.
in your packet or not,
It is.
but I think that pretty well clear. I'll go over a few things. Our concern with the special exception was not with the build to line, but with the setbacks. And contention was that the southwest corner of the proposed building was sitting at 10 feet on the setback line. And my mistake, I thought that the back of a building would be a rear, and there would be a rear property line, a rear setback. And it's my understanding now that this building has no side yards and no rear yards. And so they're all considered front yard. So there's a situation with that. However, the setback is still, appears to me, from my calculations, at a 10-foot minimum. The setback for a front yard is 15 feet. On the handout I gave you, it mentions the lot build-to line, and that's from the property line to the front of the building. But the setback line is the distance to be maintained between the lot line, an easement, or right-of-way of any structure, front, rear, or side. So am I correct in assuming that these are all front yards, all three sides?
They are.
They are. So there would be a 15-foot setback for that. The southwest corner is at a 10-foot setback. So that will push the building forward, and there will not be as many feet available as requested. So that's one of our concerns as part 1 and 2. And our third concern was that the applicant for the special exception failed to address how the business will be in harmony with the character of our neighborhood. And we think that the location is too small for their needs, and it will adversely affect the public interest. I do have the 5-page memorandum that was prepared by Planning Commission, and I'd like to respond to that just a little bit. Their item 3 said, when we say that they wholly failed to address how they would be in harmony with the character of the neighborhood, the Planning Commission thinks that we're talking about the front line of the building. That's not what we're talking about. We think, based on the handout that I gave you, that for special exceptions, the Planning Commission may make a finding that is empowered under the section of this ordinance described in the application to grant the special exception, and that granting the special exception will not adversely affect the public interest. That has nothing to do with build-to lines at all. And it's our contention that the traffic at this roundabout is too intensive, and the business model for Waffle House, though I'm a Waffle House fan, I'll tell you that, but not in this location. But their business model is a 24/7, 365 days a year, and we think that that type of business located on the roundabout at Sisk and Ed Perry will adversely affect the public interest. Any questions?
No, sir, I don't think so. Do you have a question?
Okay. I would point out that on page 25 of your handout, there's a Waffle House site layout. This is different from the site layout that was included in the appellant request for the special exception. On this page, you can clearly see a setback line is marked. And you can see that on the east side of the building, of the line, of the property line, there are setback lines that run north and south. Then at the angle that runs from north to southwest, and then back around. But the setback line is clearly marked, and there are two different distances on those setbacks. The front and the south side are at 15 feet. The other but the west front line is at 10 feet. The southwest corner of the building is on that property line. So that would not meet, and the standards for building, for lack of better words. So that would be our contention on the special exception.
All right.
Regarding the variance, we contend that the calculation used to come up with a number of parking spaces that are required was done in error. The code says that there would be one space for each 100 square feet of patron area. Now, the Planning Commission says that the calculation was correct, that the building size is 1,820 square feet, and they say that it is all being used by patrons. I think our common sense tells us that a patron area, as described by Merriam-Webster, is that a patron is one who buys the goods or uses the services offered, especially by an establishment. As an illustration of how other parking is required for a bank, they say that one space is required for each 300 square feet of gross floor area. For vehicle repair or maintenance, it requires one space for each 300 square feet of patron area. I think we're talking about where the customers sit. Our contention is that on Waffle House, their patron area is their seating area. On page 68 of your packet, there's a floor plan for the building that was proposed for East or Ed Perry Boulevard. It's hard to see, but the yellow area that I've marked off is for the rear support area, manager's closet, commissary, cooler freezer, mechanical, and I'd venture to say that the cook line is not a patron area. You're not going to get back there and cook. Consequently, if we do take the correct interpretation of patron area and being generous, it may be 1,200 square feet. At that, the parking required would be 12 spots. The Planning Commission has authority to increase it by 25%, which would be another 3, so that'd be a total of 15 parking spaces. The applicant's requested 29 spaces, though they say in their application that their business requires 30+ spaces. So we think that doubling the required number of spaces, parking spaces, is excessive, and it violates the purpose and intent of the Land Development Code. The site is too small. We also contend that the variance that is being requested is not an allowable variance. A variance is able to be granted by the Planning Commission or the Mayor, Board of Aldermen, to grant when strict enforcement of provisions would cause undue hardship. Such hardship cannot be self-created are of an economic nature. Our contention is that buying a lot that is too small for their needs is a self-created hardship and therefore should not be considered for variance. And hardship's also defined in the Land Development Code. The Planning Commission contends that variances are allowed. However, they're not allowed carte blanche. We also contend, and I think that the variance request violates several code sections regarding parking lot requirements. The Planning Commission says, well, that's something that's being handled by the Site Plan Committee. However, if we don't put the location, the building at the right spot, and we use the wrong assumptions, then you're gonna have the wrong layout for your parking. And a number of things on parking requires that, and let me say, please, I'm just going over some technical things that we think are reasons to reverse the special exception and the variance. But our main concern is traffic and public safety. But I would like to go ahead and go over the points for the reversal on technical aspects. The parking lot code section says that parking lots shall be set back 8 feet from the property line. It also says that landscaped edges shall be provided along the perimeter of all lots adjacent to streets and entrances, and the landscaped edge shall be a minimum of 8 feet. If you look at page 19 of your packet, it's a site layout plan with the same setbacks that were on the other plan, but this was the one that was with the original application. And there are about 5 areas where the parking lot is closer than 8 feet to the perimeter of the property lines. So if the northeast 2 parking spots, they're gonna lose one of those if it's adhered to based on the code. They're gonna lose another one probably at the southeast corner before it dog legs. That's too close. The south property line where the handicap parking is too close. And the 6 spaces on the west side are certainly not 8 feet from the property line. And is defined by the code section 10.1.2, the words shall and must are always mandatory and not permissive. So these are required and cannot be changed. Lastly, we submit that the Waffle House, if it's allowed to build at this site, would be detrimental to the public welfare and to our neighborhood. This is a high traffic area. The residents of Oxford Common question if it's wise to have a commercial entrance to a parking lot, a restaurant parking lot that's open 24/7, 365, so close to the roundabout is a good idea. Dangerous situations could arise with traffic coming off the roundabout. turning to the proposed Waffle House parking lot, they'd have to turn left across in oncoming traffic. At this site, there are only 2 lanes, one northbound, one southbound, and there's no turn lane. And it's very close to the splitter island on the north side of the roundabout. And we can only visualize what will happen when Della Davison lets out and the high school lets out each day, or when they start classes. And there are always events around the conference center. The Waffle House, in their variance request, states that its customers will tend to park illegally on neighborhood properties or on the right-of-way if they do not have 29 plus parking spaces. I don't think they're going to have enough space for 29 parking spaces. And if you look at page 37 on your packet, there's a letter from Waffle House dated December 30th, 2019 from Ken Williams, who was the Vice President Real Estate Representative for Waffle House at the time, if he's not still. And in this letter, he says, corporately, we have established a threshold of 30 spaces as the minimum number of parking spaces in order to have a successful restaurant operation. And before that, he says, with our years of experience, we found that providing 30 to 40 parking spaces is a standard requirement. I think the lot is clearly too small. I think most, if not everyone in Oxford Commons would love to see Waffle House locate at their previously approved site. And we would certainly welcome them to Oxford, but not at a dangerous roundabout under conditions that don't allow for them to have the parking they need. So that's the best I can say right now.
Well, we appreciate that, and we have received quite a few emails from folks in your neighborhood that also are appellants, and so we have all seen those. I forwarded the ones to our board that were sent just directly to me. At this time, I'm going to get Ben Requette to come up and respond, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I appreciate the time. I appreciate Mr. Dickerson's comments, and I do want to address several of the points that he did make. And as part of the appeal, several of the elements that he does bring up do relate to site plan review related comments, which is not uncommon for us to be evaluating a project and have similar requests for build to line variances and or special exceptions and variances, et cetera, that come before the commission for consideration. Mr. Dickerson is correct in that the build to line on this, I guess it would be the west side or the southwest side, does indicate that it is 10 feet, where the build to line requirement is 15 feet for the suburban center district. However, that's something that we have addressed with Waffle House, and so as we're going through that site plan review process, that is being adjusted. No different than the required space between the parking lots to ensure that it does comply with the requirements of the code. So I think that that's an important point to make.
So question real quick.
Sure.
It has to go back through site plan review.
It is currently, yes.
And it has to go back to the planning commission for site plan review.
For approval. This site would actually be, because it's less than 5,000 square feet, it is an administrative approval.
Okay.
But no different than anything else. We put an administrative approval case on the planning commission's agenda, so that way there is a full report with all of the approved documents.
Okay.
So then the parking lot setback of 8 feet from the property line, is that part of site plan review also?
Yes, ma'am, it is. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, and those things have, the last meeting that we had with the applicant's engineer, the site did reflect those changes, and.
They're gonna make changes?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
it did. And so I think it's also important to note Mr. Dickerson continues to mention that the site is too small for a Waffle House and for this parking. The previous site was pretty comparable in size. He's advocating for the previous site to be the location for to actually build it there, but that location was 0.5, it's just about 0.6 acres. It's 0.597 acres, where this is 0.57 acres. It's a very, they're very comparable in size. As it relates to parking, the variance request from Waffle House was for 29 parking spaces. That was the application that we received. Mr. Dickerson is correct in that we do evaluate parking requirements, and our standards are based off of the patron area. And what we received, the information that we were provided as part of the variance actually indicated that it was 1,800 square feet, but nonetheless, the variance was for what they provided, which was 29 parking spaces at that location. And so regardless of this site being too small, it has no bearing on the quantity of parking for this location. They're able to fit 29 parking spaces on it. And so if they had a 5-acre site, the parking requirements, or based on the standards, are based on the size of the building itself and the patron area for the building itself. So if you had a 5-acre site, the parking requirement would still be the same, and we would still have a situation where you have 10 employees with the potential for 38 seats inside that building, and it presents an issue. It presents how to adequately park the people that are going to come to that particular location. So there's no bearing on the size of the lot as it pertains to the quantity of parking and the ratio that's required based on this particular use. And I did provide in the staff report an exhibit, a map that actually indicates several of the lots in the commercially zoned properties in Oxford Commons, and to reflect that, the build-to line in which the special exception for approximately 77 feet on that east side, it is quite compatible with the other commercial areas, and it's quite in keeping with the style of the development that has been built in Oxford Commons. Typically what we see in Oxford Commons is about 2 rows of parking with a drive-through lane or a drive lane before the building. And so you can see with this exhibit other special exceptions that have been approved that are similar or far exceed what Waffle House was approved for at this particular location.
Ben, what is that exhibit?
It is, there's a map in here, and it's the Oxford Commons build-to line.
What
Yeah.
page is that on here?
John, it should probably be
I'll find it, don't worry.
yeah,
I
right
think
about
it's 13.
13.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Are there any other questions? I do know that there's a representative from Waffle House that's here.
So, but you said we've done the exception, for other.
You bet. The business or the fairly recently constructed building has like Fox's Pizza, and I think there's a coffee shop. You can see that on here. That was approved for about 90 feet. The Oxford School District was approved for a special exception for an administrative building that was not constructed, but that was 53 feet at the time. It was a 50-foot requirement in the zoning.
Okay.
All right. Any questions for Ben? All right, is there anyone else? I don't know if Waffle House representative wants to speak or if any other citizens want to speak, but we'll let you come now. And if I get up and leave before you finish, I apologize in advance.
No problem, no problem. My name's Drew Joyner. I'm here on behalf of Waffle House, and it's good to see you all. I know that this is a project that's been a long time in the works, and we are absolutely humbled by the outpouring of social media messages and letters we've received in our office inviting us to develop a site in Oxford. And I'm certainly honored to be a small part of hopefully making that happen. I just want to take the issues one at a time. We'll start with the special exception, and then we'll move to the variance. The special exception, and by the way, has the board received the
We
memo
have.
that we've submitted?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in our packet.
So the setbacks that the appellant referenced are not really before the board here. We're talking about the build-to line for the building. Despite that, if you look at Exhibit A of the memorandum that we submitted, the setback line has been changed in our site plan to 15 feet. So if the issue was the 15-foot setback line, our building now complies with that portion of the code. And again, this is still under review by the city permitting agencies, and we're still working
Sure.
through that process. And then I wanted to touch on the point that the appellant made about if granting the special exception is adverse to the public interest. This special exception, as Ben noted, has been granted in this development, I think maybe 10 times. And if it were adverse to the public interest to grant this type of public exception, this type of special exception, I don't believe it would have been granted that many times in this specific development. And briefly touching on the point about having a commercial entrance to a restaurant so close to the roundabout, I would note that the El Charro Mexican restaurant directly to the east of the site is also a commercial restaurant entrance that's already existing. Also, moving to the variance, regardless of how you calculate the square footage on the building, the fact remains that we still have 38 seats for customers, and we still have up to 10 employees that work on our busy shifts. And if you interpret the code to affect our development, as the appellant would suggest, on a given Christmas Day shift, you may have 10 employees all arriving in separate cars. If we're limited to 15 parking spaces, that gives us 5 parking spaces on a Christmas Day for 38 seats. I don't think that's what the code intended, to limit the parking for restaurant developments. And so that's why we applied for a variance. It doesn't really matter how you calculate the patron area. The bottom line is, we want to be able to adequately serve our customers and our employees. And then, as Ben mentioned, the size of the site isn't really at issue here. I mean, whether it's a half-acre site or a 3.5-acre site, our building size doesn't change. So anytime Waffle House develops in Oxford Commons, we're going to have to come forward and request a variance for parking. And then I also wanted to, it's not before the board tonight to go into other sections of the parking code, but if you would look again at Exhibit A, every portion of the parking lot is now outside that 8-foot buffer. So again, we're working with Ben and with the Planning Commission to make sure that we satisfy all the code requirements, and we're still excited to develop in the city of Oxford, and I'm happy to answer any questions on either of these 2 cases.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Joyner?
Ben, when will this be back up in front of you guys?
So it's still, the review is still ongoing, but once all members of the Site Plan Review Committee complete their review and approve it, then because it's less than 5,000 square feet, we would issue an administrative approval and then put that on the next agenda. But there's no action required by the Planning Commission at that time, but we just put the staff report there. So all that to say, John, it depends on at what point they satisfy all of the requirements.
Okay, thanks.
But all of those will be addressed in site plan,
Yes, ma'am.
not in this portion.
Ben, that concerns me a little bit that there's so much interest in this development that the public won't have any way to review or have any input into the site plan. I know that the land development code, for if it's under 5,000 feet, it doesn't have to go to the Planning Commission where it would be public. Is there any way that an exception can be made for this where it would be reviewed by the Planning Commission? Or can a citizen representative from the neighborhood come to the site plan meeting to take a look at this before it's blessed by the Planning Commission on a consent agenda?
I'll have to take a look at the code, but I don't know that there's necessarily an esse of why it couldn't be placed on the agenda for the Planning Commission. I don't know that it's a specific. I think the way it reads is those items those site plans that are less than 5,000 square feet are administratively approved. But I don't know that there's anything that would prohibit us from being able to place it. But then at that point, I think it would just show that the site plan is complying with the technical specifications of the Land Development Code.
Okay, or if you could at least send the approved site plan to Mr. Dickerson so
Sure.
they could look at it.
Sure. And as
this level of interest, I just think that's some public.
you bet.
And when you said I don't see any reason why not, so they could look at it again, is what you're saying.
I suppose we could. It's not been it's not our practice to do that. But what we do in an effort to keep the community informed of those administrative approvals is we actually write a staff report, no different than what we do for any other site plan that comes before the commission, and we put it on the agenda on an agenda for the Planning Commission, so that way the public can see it. They can see all the files that are approved. And have that staff report and things like that. So there's no action taken, but it always is on an agenda for the Planning Commission.
Is it, okay, and the site plan is visible
You bet.
online?
Oh, yeah.
You bet.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's,
gonna be dealing with your safety, your traffic, and everything else that goes along with some of the emails that I've seen coming through that recycling gonna come in.
Yes. So every administrative approval, which is something that was different from the past, I think myself and Judy, I think we worked to try to better inform our
because
community
it used to
of those
just
things.
go through administrative
right.
approval, but now,
Yeah, and it helps
a
us
year or so
from
ago, we started putting it on.
administratively, it helps us to be able to track those items as well into the future and have a legacy of those approvals and when site plans were approved, what the actual site plan was. So yes, it is on an agenda already.
Okay.
There's just no action required by the commission.
Okay, but if people are at that Planning Commission meeting, and it is visible to them, can they make any comments on it, or is? You hear what I'm saying?
I do.
There's a high level of interest in this.
Sure.
And to just push it on through without the public having any opportunity to take a look at it and make any comments, I just think that we can do a little better on this particular.
And that's fine. We can certainly put it on as an item for public hearing. It's not our typical practice, and so. But given the interest in this particular instance, I think we could certainly do that.
You think about it though, Janice. They're really putting it back on there for the setbacks and the parking, not for we don't like the location.
Well, no, not for we don't like the location, but for the public to see the landscaping and to feel comfortable that the setbacks are what's being proposed here or what's being said is gonna happen.
And at the same time, like I said a while ago, on your site plans where you're gonna come into your traffic and everything else is what they'll be looking at. Things that people are asking about.
So what
Does give them a chance.
are you asking us today?
I'm asking to
For there to
find
be
a
a
way for
comment
them to
time?
have a way for the public to comment on the site plan that's been looked at by the site plan review committee.
So I think to move us forward, the request before us is to consider an appeal. There would need to be a motion to grant that appeal if we are considering the appeal.
Right.
And so secondly, then
Secondly,
you would
right.
say you would like to make a motion. So I guess I should ask that first. Is there a motion or are there further questions regarding the appeal that is before us? Because it will take a motion from the board to grant that appeal. Okay, if there is not, then would you like to put forth a
Yeah.
motion?
Then I'd like to make a motion that we find a way to allow the public to review and possibly be able to comment on the site plan.
Absolutely.
I'll second that.
All right, so is there any comment regarding that or question?
No, I mean, my question would be for the public to have, so it'll basically be a public hearing, is that what?
Yeah, it'd just be like a regular item on the agenda.
Okay, just be like a regular item on the agenda instead of not on the consent agenda?
No, it wouldn't
It
even,
wouldn't-
with administrative approval, it's not
It
even
doesn't
on
have-
consent.
That's
When
right.
it's administrative approval, it's on the agenda. and it's
So what
For
so what we're
information
basically
only.
saying is we're throwing it back to the planning commission.
For the site plan.
Yeah, it sounds like in this instance, there would be a public hearing for, the approval. It wouldn't necessarily be administratively approved. We would just pull it forward to the planning commission for full consideration. No different than a site plan that exceeds those limitations.
Okay? If that's what we need to do to get the public to see it and to be able to comment on it, then I guess that's what we would do. I mean,
Okay,
it's understood that the variance and the special exception is granted, that's done. So what you're gonna be looking at are items that are specific to the site plan approval.
Yes, ma'am.
okay. So we have a motion and a second to put that on the agenda and to grant the ability for public comment. Any other comments or questions? All right, all in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I'm gonna toss it to our Mayor Pro Tem to take it from here and invite Judy Daniel up for an affordable housing update.
Come on up, Judy.
All right.
Give everybody a little time to, if they're not wanting to stay, they can get out real quick.
Hey.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. All right, next item on the agenda is the Affordable Housing Commission April update, and I'm gonna turn it over to Judy Daniels.
Thank you, sir. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through this in detail. You've got a long agenda. Just letting you know, our commissions have continued to work. They are pushing through the residual items left over from 2020 and really are ready to move forward to other issues. We are, however, at the end of the official first year, although it's 2 years of the functioning, and the commissions are ready to evolve to the next stage of their existence. The number of people who work in and near Oxford facing housing insecurity or the need for long commutes is very large. So the efforts to reach those needs are going to be ongoing. and ongoing efforts are needed to address these concerns. Therefore, one of the big recommendations in this report is how they would evolve to the next stage. Our tiered system of an executive committee and working committees below that is working well. We recommend that they request that continue. However, the leadership of the committees would change to people elected by the commissions. I have been leading the effort as we got this going, but we feel it's now time for the leadership to come from the people who are the activists who really want to see these issues move forward. Secondly, for the time being anyway, they would need to meet as often. The executive committee would meet quarterly rather than monthly. The working committees would meet every other month or as needed. And the city would continue to provide that staff and administrative support to the committees. The concept for the future is that those who are with the organizations or individuals who are working toward increasing affordable housing or assisting people who need help to remain in their homes are the individuals best equipped to lead these efforts. They have the energy and the drive needed to keep the work of the Affordable Housing Commission moving forward, and they will take the lead role in proposing solutions. Your support for this change is requested. The evaluations of the commission would be given annually or as requested, and these concepts would, if approved by you, would be finalized and added to the Affordable Housing Commission website. One important point I forgot to mention, once they have elected chairs, that is who will be addressing you. The Issues Committee goes to Executive Committee, the Executive Committee chair, or people they designate would be who would be addressing you.
Okay.
All right, so that's number one. The second one, you asked to learn more about housing trust funds. I have provided in this report a range of additional information about how they function. The Affordable Housing Commission requests at this time that you commit to the creation of a housing trust fund as recommended in our Vision 2037 plan once a way to find initial funding for it has been determined. That is not determined yet, but to commit to it, which we already have in our plan, and that the leaders, the newly elected leaders of the Housing Commission would come back to you in June with more specific recommendations as to how to implement this tool. They wish to present the options for how it could be funded and how it should be used. These would include specific recommendations as to who would manage it, how it would be managed, its philosophy of use, and how requests would be considered, and what funding sources might be sought. So those are the two requests from the Affordable Housing Commission. Let us go forward, evolved. And number two, let them come back to you with specific recommendations to create a housing trust fund.
Okay. Do we need a motion on that?
Both of those need a motion, yes.
Okay, all right.
I so move.
Okay. All right, with a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Judy.
We can do both for this, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy.
Appreciate it.
All right. Item 13 is to discuss Heartland Community Growth Program and Toolkit. John?
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. And I have on the screen up here, I want to introduce Katie Milligan with Heartland Forward. I understand that you've got a packet of information, a sort of a PowerPoint presentation for this in your packet, but I've got printouts if you guys want printouts. I also put a 2-pager of this on your desk. I had one left over. Mark, did you get one? I did not. Heartland Forward is a self-described think and do tank in Bentonville, Arkansas, funded by the Walton Family Foundation. Their mission is to create a stronger economy in the heartland of America, to bring back jobs, people, businesses, and that sort of thing to the heartland. They were formed officially about a year and a half ago, October of 2019. The inaugural program that they're putting out there is called the Heartland Forward Community Growth Program and Toolkit. The idea being the growth from the Heartland needs to be growth from the inside out. They need to foster an entrepreneurial ecosystem, not just for specific entrepreneurs as we think of them, it's like we have here with FNC and Next Year Solutions, but social entrepreneurs and even community entrepreneurs. So the communities would be very entrepreneurial in how they approach their economy. They've put this program together, excuse me, with help of Donna Harris, she is the founder of a venture capital company called 1776, as well as another company that's very active in the community growth program called Builders and Backers. This program is designed to teach communities how to better grow their entrepreneurial ecosystem, as well as to raise funds and give those funds back to the community in the form of Pebble Grants. These Pebble Grants are grants that are available to up to about $5,000 to individuals who have an idea for how a business could be formed. In this case, actually social entrepreneurs, but how to solve a problem. Give them $5,000 and they can go out and experiment with this. Let you know exactly how the problem can be tackled and how well the business that gets formed or the program that gets formed can solve that problem in the future. Heartland Forward has created a pilot program in 4 communities nationwide, throughout the Heartland. Those 4 communities are Columbus, Ohio, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Iowa City, Iowa, and Oxford, Mississippi. We're by far the smallest community in this. It's a huge honor for Heartland Forward to consider us in this program. So we are really looking to our city, county, and university to be the inaugural sponsors of this program. We are here to ask, we are going to ask the city, county, and university to each put in $15,000 into this program to create basically our beginning numbers of $45,000, so we can go ahead and make our public national announcement of this program. That $15,000 that we're asking you for today, 100% of those dollars are going into the community. They're going to be going back to sponsor 3 Pebble Grants, so that there will be 3 individuals who are going to be vetted by a team from Oxford as well as a team from Heartland Forward about their idea, about the solution, about the problem that it's trying to solve. And that money will be going into those programs. And a year from now, we'll be back here telling you, this one worked, this one didn't work, this is why it worked, this is why it didn't work. So we're here to ask you for $15,000 for an inaugural launch of this program. We're very happy about what this is doing. And I'd like to let Katie Milligan add any color commentary if she'd like to.
Great, thank you guys, and you'll have to excuse me, I unfortunately have laryngitis, so sounding a little like a frog today, but happy to be with you all, and just wanted to add that, as John mentioned, we are a Think and Do Tank. This is our inaugural program. We're focused on 20 states throughout the Heartland, so if you imagine Texas to the Canadian border, over to Ohio, down to Alabama, and everything in between. We selected those communities, including Oxford, for a variety of reasons. One was a strong tie to the university. Another, which has been incredibly obvious through the work that John and his team have done, is a really strong public-private partnership and a strong willingness to really get into the community. One thing I'd like to add is, in addition to the curriculum that we have with Builders and Backers, that actually takes these builders, that we call them, these people that are solving community problems, through this idea accelerator, and then allows them to utilize the $5,000 Pebble Grant to then experiment on their idea. We're also connecting them to backers. And how we identify backers are individuals or organizations with political, financial, or social capital that can help these ideas scale and grow. So we're really building out the pipeline for these social entrepreneurs. And in addition to that, we're layering on another component by our partnership with Bloom by Accenture. And Bloom is developing the digital platform for communities to help scale and grow this entrepreneurial thought process. So we'll have the Idea Accelerator that we'd like to launch and open up very soon, and that will start June 1st and run through August. But then we also have this community building curriculum that will be open source to anybody in the Oxford community. So if somebody from a local church or a local nonprofit or FNC or whomever wants to run this buildership workshop, they will be able to do that because of our partnership with the Chamber, with the City of Oxford, with the county, and with the university at no cost to them. And what this allows is this idea of buildership and really spurring this entrepreneurial thought process in communities. And we know that that's a very important part to getting new ideas and new entrepreneurs in the Heartland. So that digital piece will be part of the process. We'd just like to also add that in addition to launching in Oxford, we are going to be launching first in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we're looking at doing a simultaneous launch. Obviously, at Heartland Forward, we have gone in and become and done the first investment, but we consider it very much a failure if you feel like you as a community, you being the community of Oxford, don't feel as though you have ownership over this and the ability to take it and grow and scale. One other thing I would just like to add is that I'm a proud graduate of the University of Mississippi. So I had no part in selecting Oxford as a community, but when I joined the team, I was very, very proud and very excited to have Oxford on the short list. So I am happy to answer any questions, and I know John will as well.
Well, thank you, Kate. Board, y'all have any questions for Kate? All right, I'm going to add that this is the group, Heartland is the group that named us one of the top micropolitans in the nation. So we do have a pretty good relationship with them. I think $15,000 from the city matched from the county and from the university is a small amount to pay to get this program going and to help young entrepreneurs or any entrepreneur out there that has an idea. And so I would be for it. I can't vote on it since I'm acting mayor, but
keep in mind, we're open for more, as much as you want to.
Well, I think let's start with 15
We'll
and
start
then
with 15.
go from there. I do think it's a great
20?
idea.
Anybody?
Actually, it's not in our budget line item, where would it come from?
You wouldn't be able to take that from your community promotions. There is an unallocated balance in there that we kept, so $15,000.
So we have it in there.
Good, great.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second? All right, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. I
John.
appreciate the work you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, on top of that, we will have an update from the Oxford Conference Center. Hayden with the new hair, come on. Like the haircut.
Ashley, is 14A the FEMA?
Yes, it is.
Okay. First item is to request permission to enter into an emergency lease agreement with the Mississippi State Department of Health and FEMA, in conjunction with FEMA. This would be to provide indoor space for the vaccinations.
Yeah.
So they've requested indoor space as we move into the warmer months. And it's, just to clarify on the document that I've provided for you in your packets, this looks different from what we would typically provide for a client, because this is not going through an RFP process. We're going with their paperwork versus our typical lease agreement. And what they've requested that we establish a timeline which would start as early as April 26th and go through the end of, I think it's the 30th of August, as potential dates. And then they've just kind of, the first tier is that first set of dates, which would start May 3rd and go through June 17th. I do have one revision that has popped up I don't know how we want to handle that, but there's a date conflict on May 5th, and it would either be replaced with May 4th or May 6th. I just haven't heard back yet. So we're just requesting permission to enter into this lease agreement.
Okay, and that, Pope, you would have to review and, correct?
I think it needs to be pending council's review. Paul has not reviewed it as far as I know.
It was kind of a last-minute addition.
Okay.
Yeah, and it,
June 8th has been pulled out, right?
June 8th is a dark date. Yep, they won't do any at all.
okay.
Yes.
And $1,600 per day?
It's $1,600 per day. Most days, we have them in kind of their first choice room. A couple of dates, we already had date conflicts and kind of had to split them over, but same rate for every day.
So moved.
All right, so is that a motion with pending legal?
Yes.
All right.
And with the date adjustment that she told you orally.
Okay.
Part of the motion.
John's made that motion, Mark seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
I'll just be brief. I have
Go ahead.
just a quick kind of
So we kind of
feel
backed
good.
up. We kind of switched around there, so go ahead.
Just a feel-good update from the conference center. Due to our capacity limitations over the past, pretty much the first half of this fiscal year, we've really done more small and mid-size, primarily one-day events, because we kind of had to shrink down what we were able to provide. So in the past 6 weeks, we've seen that evolve over without having any capacity restrictions. We've seen the inquiries kind of shoot back up to our normal larger events, and most importantly, multi-day events that provide hotel rooms, which is our primary goal. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things just so everyone knows kind of what we have in our pipeline over the next couple months. We have, starting in July, we have a 4-day conference, and that will be for about 300 people. We have our annual Botanicals conference, which is an international conference we're still proceeding with. It's scheduled for August. Again, a multi-day event, a couple hundred people. And then we're hosting 3 kind of back-to-back consecutive conferences in September and October, and those are ranging from 150 people up to 400. So we're back. Basically, these are groups that have postponed spring of 2020 and then fall of 2020, and now we're moving them forward. So we just have a little bit of momentum, and then along with these vaccination rentals, we're kind of gaining some momentum.
Awesome.
Did we miss just one of the botanical conferences? They were doing it
We
afterwards,
did. It
just
was,
one?
they typically book in April. So we postponed April short term to August of last year, and then now we've just basically pushed it a little bit further.
Good.
All right.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Hayden. All right, number 15 is adopt a proclamation declaring April 2021 as Entrepreneurship Month in Oxford. Wayne Andrews, is Wayne here? Okay, Wayne not being here, I'll read the proclamation. Whereas the Oxford-Lafayette County Chamber of Commerce, Yoknapatawpha Arts Council, University of Mississippi, Women's of Worth and Excellence, and Small Business Development Office have collaborated to offer the citizens of Oxford access to free workshop and educational resources to promote small business growth and entrepreneurship in our community. Whereas entrepreneurship in Oxford has long lent their talents and passions to solve problems, generate growth, and create prosperity. We celebrate these entrepreneurs who boost our economy, and we pledge support for them in their pursuit of the ideas and the innovations of tomorrow. Whereas these partners are resolved to support entrepreneurs looking to use their ideas and experience to build a better life for themselves and their family, as well as to tap into the diverse skills and talents across our community so that entrepreneurs from all backgrounds can forge their own future. Whereas our community is enriched through partnership and in recognition of the collaboration of these organizations have demonstrated to create a month-long series of programs that connect our entire community. Now, therefore, I, but Mayor Alvin Tannenhill of the City of Oxford do hereby proclaim the month of April 2021 to be Entrepreneurship Month of Oxford. Do I have a motion to accept that proclamation?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, Donna, if you'll come up. 15A is to request permission to purchase 3 buses for out.
Good evening. Actually, it's 5.
Oh, 5.
Not 3. What I am asking for are 5 buses that are on state contract. It's a mid-size, low-floor bus that it's kind of like the cutaways we have. The cost of the buses are $48,448. With 5, the cost would be $492,240. The city's 10%, local matches the $49,224. Each year, we collect money from 4 different apartment complexes for funds for our service through their complex. This money normally goes on to our reimbursement budget for the operations portion to offset that cost. Since the CARES Act is paying us the capital and the operations 100%, those funds are just sitting there. So the city, I've talked to MDOT, they say it's not FTA funds and neither is it MDOT funds, so it can be used for however the city would like to use them. So we are proposing that that's the money the city uses. I do have money set aside in our budget for buses, but this money is available, so it's not gonna be any money that the city's having to pay.
We like that.
Yeah.
So
It's not 3 free buses, it's 5 free buses.
it's 5.
Yeah, even better.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Donna, 15B is an update from out.
So MDOT is actually set aside an 800 number that goes throughout the state of Mississippi. When you call that number, you pick the region you're in. We're in Region 4. It will come to our office and our staff will assist them with numbers of who to call to get transport to their to get vaccinated. We will be working, Oxford Transit, but we will be working with the City County Transit to go out into the county as well. Our commission agreed for us to do on-demand response trips through the county of ones that the city county can't get to, and bring people in to get their COVID shots. So that is just us helping in the community to assist in transportation. I would like to see if we could put that on your website as well with the information and number to call, and so that we can get that done.
Okay. Thank you, Donna. All right, Greg, come on up. I want to request permission to accept a donation of the Little Free Library from Amy Donnelly and her son to be placed at Lamar Park. Is Amy here or something? Okay, go ahead, Greg.
All right, this is for a donation of a small little library. It's comparable to what we have in all the other parks. I think it'll fit in nicely.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. 17 is a request permission to accept donation of plants from CoreLogic to be used for the flower beds at Bailey Branch Park.
All right, we're gonna add an additional flower bed at Bailey Branch, and they approached me about contributing $200. It doesn't cover the whole price, but we were gonna do a flower bed and do a kind of a joint venture with them.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to accept?
I move we approve.
All right.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, number 18 is a request permission to close South and Larp between Old Taylor Road and Johnson Avenue for removal of a large tree. Both lanes of traffic will be closed approximately 5 hours, and then only a single lane to be closed for up to 3 hours. Greg?
All right. Yeah, this is probably the largest tree left on South Lamar on that end. Take a entire day to remove it, like it stated, was 5 hours to full lane closures, single for 2 to 3 hours.
And when do you want to close?
The 27th, a week from today.
Okay.
I've contacted the homeowner and talked with her, and she hates to see it go, but we've been
needs
watching
to
this.
go.
It needs to
Yeah,
go.
we've been watching this tree for about 3 years steadily decline, and need to remove it.
So moved.
All right. Motion is second, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank-
Jason, one thing, we need some signage at the roundabout, because if you don't get off that roundabout and
You
go
gotta
to
go all the
Bell,
way.
you can't get anywhere.
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't know that it's,
Well, they can take a left or right on Beanland and go around, right, can't they?
Right.
Is it?
No.
No, it'll be
Yeah,
closed.
before Beanland, isn't it?
it's
Before
Old
Cleveland.
Taylor.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Old Taylor is the first turn once you pass
So they'd have to
the
go on Old
roundabout.
Taylor and go back, yeah.
Yeah. So they need to know that it's closed before they get on the roundabout.
Great call, Janice. Greg, will you take care of that?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, number 19 is request permission to send a lineman to attend the TVPPA Advanced Lineman Training Phases 1 through 5 in Jackson, Tennessee on May 25th through the 27th, June 29th through July 1st, July 6th through the 8th, September 21st through the 23rd, and November 2nd through the 4th of 2021 at an estimated cost of $5,793.75. Rob?
That's a mouthful. We've got a lineman, Brad McCoy, who has completed apprentice training. He is working his way up to a journeyman. We'd like to help his development along by sending him to advanced line training. We already had permission last year before COVID to send him to 2 of these, but it was postponed because we didn't travel at that time. We'd like to send him to all 5 this year and advance his training as quickly as possible, because in the next 2 or 3 years, we're probably going to see some retirements of our seasoned linemen. I'd really like for Brad to be ready to take over some of those tasks and be capable. So.
Okay. Motion is second, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right, number 20 is request permission to accept the reverse auction bid for the combination vac jet truck for the Oxford Utilities Water Waste Division. Rob?
So in the fiscal year 20 budget, we also had a vac jet truck, which we didn't bid and purchase due to the pandemic. We recently received permission from the board to bid this item, and the bids came in just under the budgeted amount. It's a large amount, but it's going to take months to get it in, and we really need it with some of our sewer issues around town. We'll be able to vacuum out and clean the sewer lines and manholes, and I think it'd be a game changer for us.
How much is it?
$374,998, I think.
And we're budgeted for that, right?
We are.
Okay.
So moved.
Motion is second, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right, can consider a proposal for engineering service of WL Burrell Engineering for the risk and response assessment and emergency response plan for the Oxford Utilities Water and Water Waste Division. Rob?
Yeah, it became apparent a few weeks ago that we were going to have to submit a risk and resiliency assessment to EPA by June 31st. So we started looking for an expert in that field. I submitted in your digital packets, your board pack, the proposal that Burley submitted. If you didn't get a copy of that, let me know, and I've got hard copies. If anybody needs to see a hard copy on that. Okay.
Got it.
Great. Well, Burley got me a proposal Friday afternoon after the packets went out, and they're proposing to do this work. They do the work they're working on Greenville's submission right now, the city of Greenville. They're based in Greenville. And so they've got experience in this type work, which is what we need. They're going to go and evaluate our system, identify any risks, and beef up our resiliency. And then after this is complete, they won't have to submit an emergency response plan to meet EPA's requirements of our water system as well. But this is the first step. It has to be completed by June 31st, so we think time is of the essence to get them on board. The price is $15,000 not to exceed, and that's engineering fees. So I would request your approval so we can start the meetings and they can start their work.
Okay. Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Rob.
Thank you all.
First reading of a proposed ordinance amendment, the City of Oxford Land Development Code, Articles 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, and 10. Ben?
Thank you. Yes, we're proposing several modifications to the Land Development Code, and I'll walk you through them briefly. In Article 2, we do just update the Oxford Commons PUD to reflect the modifications that were made in 2019, April of 2019. So it's just a cleanup edit. In Article 3, and under accessory amenity, we provide a reference to a section that we'll discuss here in a moment, but it references over to the accessory structures provision. In several instances, we've added a reference to the sound ordinance that's been has been created. So there were standards in here that related to noise or whatever, and so we're just doing a cross-reference to those elements. As I mentioned just a moment ago, under accessory uses and structures, so we've continued to work to refine this proposal, or at least this provision, and also combined a previous section, accessory amenity, actually have incorporated into the standards here, better define that, and then also we made accessory structures in a side or a rear yard approvable by staff as a special use, and we provided a couple standards for staff to evaluate, which is when they're located in the side yard, that they need to be behind the front building line, and then they shall comply with all the other requirements of this provision of code, and then no accessory building may be built within 5 feet of a property line. It's pretty standard language that we already evaluate. In Article 4, we are proposing to add the potential for a phased parking plan, something that we've actually seen on a couple of occasions now, where people have a development that's going to come in multiple phases, but yet they would like to build all of the parking right now, and so a couple of the buildings they haven't been considered at that point for approval, but we've evaluated them to ensure that they're compliant with the requirements. They have them in concept, but they just haven't brought those plans to us. So they would like to put in the infrastructure, so all the the curb and the stormwater infrastructure in place. And so what we would do is allow that to be requested by special exception by the Planning Commission. And then right. That's right. I think that would just have to be evaluated by the Planning Commission as part of that special exception request. And then Article 7, signage, we have seen a few variance requests of late along the highways. Highway 7, Highway 30 are recent examples, and so we're proposing a slightly taller sign. The variances that have been granted in all of those instances have been for 2 additional feet. Right now, the tallest sign in Oxford may be 6 feet, and so when you're immediately adjacent to a highway like Highway 7, Highway 6, Highway 30, something like that, then you would be able to have an 8-foot sign. The signage area still remains the same.
Okay.
And then noticing requirements in Article 9. We're actually trying to align our published notice provisions with what the statutory requirements are for the state. We intend to continue to post legal notice in the paper, but it's the paper is running I think 2 days a week now, the local paper, and so it's becoming a little bit more difficult for us to get those publications in the paper. And so this would actually say that we would only have to notice for rezonings and amendments to or new ordinances. And then we previously considered an amendment to the posted notice sign, but after discussion with the Planning Commission, we've decided to continue to work on that, and so we've pulled that provision back, and we'll continue to work on that. And then lastly, a few edits within the definition section in Article 10. And since this is a first reading, there's no action required.
Okay, being the first reading. Next one, we'll have the public hearing next meeting. Any questions for Ben so far? All right, thank you, Ben. All right, number 23 is request approval for the final plat amendment for case number 2730 for Mike Fudd for Heritage Center subdivision Lot 6 for property located at 311 Heritage Drive, being further identified as PPIN 19072. Robert.
The subdivision amendment is proposed to facilitate the creation of the NOLA subdivision, which was a requirement for the NOLA site plan from July 2019. A 40-foot sliver of Lot 6 of Heritage Center will be transferred to the NOLA subdivision to allow for public right-of-way access. Engineering has provided comments related to access and easements, which are in the staff report. The April Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request for final plat amendment for Heritage Center Lot 6 with the conditions that are listed in the staff report.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I move we approve.
Okay, have a motion? Second. Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Number 24 is request approval of preliminary and final plat for case 2729, Mike Fudd for the NOLA subdivision for property located at west of Heritage Drive and north of Jackson Avenue, being further identified as PPIN 19072 and 27675. Robert?
And this is the single lot subdivision for the NOLA, and it's again proposed to require satisfy a requirement of site plan approval from 2019. And the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request for preliminary and final plat approval for the NOLA subdivision with the conditions that are listed in the staff report.
Okay. Second. All right, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Number 25 is request approval for the final plat amendment for case number 2734, Evergreens 314 LLC for the Evergreen subdivision phase 2 for property located on Dalen Avenue, being further identified as PPIN 39405 and 39498. Great.
Yes, sir. This property was annexed into the city limits in 2018. It's southeast of M Trade Park and north of Old Sardis Road. It has been, the property has been before the board before for a final plat approval for a 2-lot subdivision. These 2 lots are referred to as Lot 3 and Lot 4. The current amendment proposes vacating Lot 4, revising Lot 3, which includes Burns First United Methodist Church, which has been constructed on it, and defining the location, ownership, and maintenance of the stormwater detention. Engineering has no conditions associated with any approval granted for this plat amendment. And at the April Planning Commission meeting, Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request. Staff recommends approval of the amendment with the one condition stated in your report.
All right. Any questions for Gray?
This is zone neighborhood residential.
Yes, ma'am.
It's going to be residential. Okay.
I'm not sure the plans for the other lot. I don't think we have any plans for Lot 4 at this time. Lot 3 is already, the Burns First United Methodist Church has been constructed there, but it is zoned NR.
Okay.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, first reading and public hearing and vote on the proposed ordinance amendment of Chapter 66, License and Taxation, Article 1, General, to add Section 66 and 66-10, utility tax imposed to the Code of the Ordinance of the City of Oxford, Mississippi. And let me just go ahead before Ashley goes. This is not a new tax. We're not adding any new tax.
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead.
That is correct. As noted in my memo, on the 6th, I did receive an email from the Mississippi Department of Revenue, or DOR, asking for a copy of our local ordinance that enacted the collection of our, what we call city utility tax. And I guess this is a review, sorry, taking this off. I guess they're doing some housekeeping as well. So in my conversation with them after the email I called, They said multiple counties and cities were having to get this information to them, that it was a very old tax they've been collecting, and they were just kind of checking off boxes, making sure everybody had their ordinances. It is actually one sentence that we're adding, just, it gives the state the ability to collect that for us. So, and since we do have to have this in by the 30th, this was pretty much our last chance to ensure that we continue to receive that tax.
Okay, so if,
It's almost like a diversion. It's almost like a sales tax diversion that they just,
They collect it and give it back to us.
They can give it back to us. That's exactly right.
yeah, but we have to have it done by the 30th,
We have to have it back to their office by the 30th.
the ordinance?
Yeah.
Pope, how do we do that?
You do just what you're doing, it's first reading and a public hearing.
Yep, that's the reason I asked to,
Do that anyway.
yeah, to forego the 3 reading procedure since it was of a time was
So
of the
moved.
essence.
All right. All
Thank
in
you so
favor?
much.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, number 27, request permission to accept the donation of a dog kennel from Home Depot for the Oxford Police Department K-9 unit. Chief?
Yes, sir. They've done this for us a few times. We needed a new kennel, and they agreed to build that for us and deliver it.
All right. Have a motion to accept?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Number 28 is request permission to approve a request for Goose Creek Tennis Club to host their fireworks display on the easternmost tennis court at 9 p.m. on July 3rd, 2021. Chief?
Yes, sir. Just as is. We just bring this to you guys since it's a fireworks request.
Okay. Any questions to the chief?
Motion made.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Consider a request for the visit of Oxford, consider a request for the visit of Oxford to use the back part of City Hall steps for a temporary chalk art display on April 29th, 2021. Installation is estimated to be approximately 6 hours, and the date may need to be moved due to weather. Chief?
They have requested to do this also at the City Hall Plaza on April the 29th, and that's pending being able to raise the funds to be able to do this.
Okay. And how much do they think they need?
They didn't say.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Motion to accept?
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Consider a request for Checkers for a revocable license for a monument sign to be located on City Road on City right away on West Jackson Avenue. You messed me up with that road.
Sorry about that. That gets everybody
engineering
except
terms.
an engineer. Engineers are the only ones that read that as right of way. So I still look at Jackson Road as Jackson right of way, and clearly that's not what that's called. So Checkers is asking to use the existing pole that is at the Abner site for their sign. It's located on city right of way, and so if that approval is granted, it would be for a revocable license. And I noted in the report that, as has been discussed for several years now, the city's got long-term plans for improvements for West Jackson Avenue once we secure funding. At that time, of course, that sign would have to be moved because we will use that right-of-way. With a revocable license, you could also have it be moved at any other time. So I've stated that if the board chooses to grant the license, that it would be noted that it would be the owner's responsibility to remove that sign, and I've said it in here within 30 days, just to clarify that we will expect it to be removed quickly. In the packet, I included a couple of photos just to let you see. We've got a very, very wide right-of-way at this location, and the sign is actually 26 feet from the road there. It's really wide. I'm not sure why we had such a right of way right there, but we do, and so it's well outside of the clear zone. I don't support things in the right of way. You hear me say that every time, but this is out of the clear zone. It's out of that part of it. Ben has reviewed the signage proposed and says it's approvable according to the ordinances as well, and this is similar to previous requests that you have seen for other locations, except this is on Jackson Avenue.
And it'll be a monument sign instead of a pole sign?
It will. It'll be a monument sign. I believe it is 6 feet tall.
Okay.
So.
And it's on the same stand. I move we approve.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. 31, discuss Chapter 34, Article 3 of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Oxford Sound Ordinance. Rick?
Well, go back 2 weekends ago when after we passed the first sound ordinance, weekends ago, after we passed the first sound ordinance, I came by an establishment after leaving and realized we were way too loud. Asked Joe Bishop to come down. I don't know if anybody's here is going to come up. Jeff or Joe to speak on this also. Asked Joe to go down, check it. I know they had multiple calls that night, multiple issues, and at this time, I'd like to readjust the sound ordinance to where I think we would be in a better spot. It is a working in progress, as we told everybody when we started, so just here to discuss.
Okay.
Just one comment on that is when we instituted the ordinance, and part of this was just making sure we're measuring it right, we had put in 75 dBA for any outdoor venue. It was up in the definitions, but it wasn't down in the lower part of it. But it was all of our intent to have a maximum of 75 dBA, 5 feet from the source, not 5 feet of property line, but 5 feet at the source. So if you look back in our definitions of the original ordinance that we approved in lines 15 and 16, we had that 75 dBA, but the first few weekends they were measuring to the 85 in the historic urban district.
And they were also measuring from the property line.
Property line, not the source. So there's some changes. There's already some adjustments that we can make in our measuring techniques that tell us that we weren't far off the mark at that 75. Just a technical comment on that.
Okay.
If they were going to continue to monitor from the property line, I was going to suggest going to 70. But if we're going 5 feet from the source, I think we all use the back parking lot here and down at Funky's to understand the 75, 5 feet from the source, and I'm good with that.
I mean, we can, my recommendation is let's go back to what our ordinance says.
Let's start measuring it correctly.
Measuring it correctly and see where we are before we make a change. Because we weren't measuring it correctly for the outdoor venue. And I don't know if we just didn't put it in the right section of the ordinance. Maybe that's a modification that legal might help us with. It was in the definition stage and not in the bottom, but it's.
I'm with you 100%, Mark, but just to be clear, we're not talking about, as of now, changing anything on the indoor.
No,
this is all outdoor.
This is just all outdoor, and our concerns, even at our demonstrations when we were out back, is what is 85, what is 75, how are the sound waves going to propagate in an unenclosed environment? And that's where we specifically defined what an outdoor venue was. It doesn't have walls, it doesn't have a roof, and it was at 75.
And I think we were all good at 75 at that time. I was going to suggest going down to 70, but if we actually measure
that's 5 feet from the source. And if I remember the data, I can't remember how it drops every 50 feet. You lose 5 decibels, or I can't remember the math and engineering on that. I would, like us to try measuring that and see where we are, and then talk about it again in 2 weeks and see if we're right on that or not.
Okay.
But when we get the letters to say that I can feel it in my condo, there's no way you're going to feel 75 dBA
5 feet from the source.
in a condo on the other side.
Okay.
Jesse, somebody in the back has a comment, I think.
Griffin, if you want to come up.
Thank you all for having me up here. My name is Griffin Tanner. I'm the building or business owner of Harrison's that just did the outdoor space that most of the complaints have probably come from. We want to be neighborly and we want to work with y'all. We appreciate the opportunity. Let me first say that 2 weeks ago was the Arkansas baseball weekend. Very exciting time for Oxford, probably the best tourism scene that we have seen since COVID. And as we are still learning how to navigate this, we're talking to consultants and people on how we're going to do our final plan and a real stage. We have a temporary stage right now. We're using speakers that would be used in any one of my bar and restaurants. And typically those would project in 180 degrees and bounce off walls. And as you saw at Funky's and the library or even outside, it's loud. We heard those complaints. I took some of them personally. My manager did. Been working very well with Joe Bishop, and we adjusted immediately. And we have dialed it back. I just Googled just sound decibels, and typical rock concert's going to be 100, 110 plus, but there's a lot of things that you can do to adjust that sound with sound dampening. We haven't, again, it's a temporary stage. We don't have anything behind it. A lot of our measurements that have spiked over 85 have been on the nuke side as opposed to the high cotton side. And we've adjusted and turned it down, and I think we want to work with y'all, and I definitely hear you on the 75 thing. We're happy to kind of guinea pig this thing since we're the first outdoor venue. A lot of them still haven't opened yet, and they're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. Before we, start adjusting what y'all have decided, we would like to work with you and try it for these next couple weeks. But I would, I apologize, I don't have my mask on, so I got to read these properly. Just Googling it, an alarm clock can register 75 decibels. A vacuum cleaner registers at 80 decibels. This is at the source. So when you're asking us to drop to 75 at the source, it's going to significantly change. I don't even know that I could have a show at our venue, which is our goal with the second phase, when we build a real stage and when we have sound dampening and custom speakers that instead of going everywhere, go straight into our crowd. Those are all expenses that we're willing to incur because we want to bring tourism to Oxford. We want to have shows that blues festivals, Mississippi, the things that happen in the county and other places, we want to bring them to the square. So I would caution you and ask for you to let us work with law enforcement upon your recommendation, but before we just change it because things went too crazy the first exciting weekend.
So we're not changing anything.
We're not changing anything.
Back to our regular thing. I think they were misreading. So we didn't change anything.
I guess what I'm asking is if I don't know that we can successfully have an event if the source is 75. I don't know. I'd have to consult my people, but
I think we just made a decision to stick with the ordinance of what we got, and they'll work with it. We're going to go 2 weeks. I think it's a living.
It's a living, yeah.
We need to try it.
Just like you're working with us, we just got to figure it out.
I think we gotta go with what we have, but do the 75, 5 feet from the source, and then that'll let us measure what it's doing at property line and how the sound waves are propagated out of the open venue. I mean, cause that's what the testing out back showed us when we were doing that. That's how we went from the 85 to the 75, 5 feet from the source, just because of that distance. So I think we need to try that and see where we land on that.
Yeah, we appreciate you trying your hardest to work with us, and we'll continue to do that, but I think it's just one of those things, like Rick said, it's a living document. We got to continue just to adjust accordingly, and there may be things that you're going to have to do to stay within compliance, and we appreciate you working. I think you're working with some consultants on that, so I think that's what we need to do, but tonight we're not voting to change anything. We're just voting, or we're not even voting, but we're just saying we're going to stick with what we have on the books. That's right.
Clarify what we have and how we're gonna measure it.
Yep. That's right.
So the original document said 75 at the source?
That's correct.
5 feet.
5 feet. 5 feet from the source.
And then the out at the property line was.
It didn't address it at the property.
Yeah.
I mean, to to me, that would fall into that 80, maximum of 85 at the property line in historic urban district. But if you're 75 at the property line, I don't think I can get a DBA of 85.
Right.
I mean, if you're 75 at the source, I don't know how you can get an 85.
Right.
At the property line. I think it was just misread and misinterpreted, or somebody said the property line, and that's what we stuck with. So
I think it's because when they were measuring the indoor at Funky's and places like that, they were doing it from right at the door, which is really not the source. They were doing it 5 feet from, they considered the door the source.
Well,
correct.
I mean, when you read the ordinance, it says for the indoor, it says 5 feet from the facade of the building.
Okay.
It specifically says it's 85 to 5 feet from the facade. In the outdoor, it does not address that.
All right, in spirit of moving this on, I think we just need to continue to work on it. I think working with you, I think that's a great idea, but we just need to go back to what we originally had, so. All right.
Sir?
Yeah, Dave?
Yeah, I just had a comment for you. Sorry for interruption. I was listening to the conversation and I looked back over, I was going over everything with Ben. We looked at the recommendations and then how it was written up, and it appears there was an error there. Okay, and so that's where the confusion lies.
Yeah.
So I'll reach out to Ben. Correct, it was supposed to, 75 is supposed to define an ambient, 75 and below defines ambient at 5 feet from the speaker. So when that entertainment section is done and someone's having dinner on a porch or you're at Sonic, 75 and below at 5 feet is the limit. That way Sonic can have the speakers out till whatever in the morning. The entertainment is above 75. But at the property line in the historic district, it's at 85, just like at the pubs here. Okay, that was the intention. But originally we had suggested 75 at the property line, but to keep it consistent, they put it at 85. Now, that leaves room to change it, but that was because of the confusion, wanting to minimize the levels. Okay, and then that's pretty much where it was. So I'll provide that clarification, and we can see how this week works out, or this next week or so works out, and what concessions are made.
So let me stop you right there. Where we're going right now is we are 75 decibels from the source. That is what the intent is of this board.
5 feet from the source.
5 feet from the source.
That would be
on an outdoor venue.
Right. Right, that would be considered ambient levels, the maximum ambient level.
Okay.
Okay.
And then if you go to outdoor entertainment, you would have either 75 or 85 at the property line. Right now, it's in the outside of this district right here. It's 70 at the property line for outdoor entertainment. Any other commercial area.
If there's that type of confusion, I'm gonna say we go 70 at the property line across the city.
Okay.
And I'll make that motion.
Okay.
If I might make a comment on that, the intention of the ordinance was to keep things, quote, the way they are. And the one question that was added was having outdoor sound added to the.
Okay.
Added to it, so I just made.
We made a motion. Do we have a second? Calling for a second in the motion.
Can you repeat your motion, Rick?
My motion, if we're going to where he's wanting to go, my motion was to go 70 across the city, just as we have in other districts. And that just makes it an even across the city at 70 at the property line, is that correct?
For outdoor venues.
For outdoor venues.
Oh, for outdoor venues.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And Mark we have to have a public hearing on that before it goes into.
Okay,
It's an
so
ordinance amendment, so you'll have to have a public hearing.
that's the first reading?
So is that a first reading?
Actually, the first reading will be the next meeting, it sounds like.
Well, you can have a first reading and a public hearing.
Okay, yeah, I know.
So
It does have to be reduced to writing before an ordinance is amended. There has to be, if it's gonna be an amendment, it's gotta be reduced to writing under state statute.
I want to know right now what the statute states right now as of today. It is 75, is it 75?
The way we interpret it is it's 85 from the property line, the way it is written.
No, that's.
The way I read it, it's not
It's not,
Read it
that's,
3 times, and, I'm reading it for outdoor venues, and maybe it just wasn't written clearly, but that's the way I'm interpreting it.
Mark, do you have it in front of you?
Look it up again, I'll look it up.
Because the way we have it is commercial zoning is a max of 75, residential is a max of 65, multi-unit is 45, but downtown is a max of 85 for outdoor venues.
that's too much.
Okay. Rick, with your motion to go to 75 across the board, 70, excuse me, across the board, we would need.
Same as outside of the district of our historic area.
Okay, so that would need to be we'd need to have it on the next meeting as a first reading and a public hearing. So.
And the advantage of that allows the property owner to do modifications within the property.
Beforehand.
In that sense.
Okay.
So it can be louder at the source now, it just can't propagate from the property.
All right.
That allows some of that sound deafening and speaker placement and et cetera.
All right, so next meeting, we'll have the wording published, and then we'll go from there. Is that correct? Okay. All right, thank y'all very much. All right, 32 is discuss petition and recommendation for.
We have a 34A. Oh,
Yeah, but I'm on 30. I'm on 32.
Oh, okay.
All right, 32, discuss petition and recommendation from change.org related to the intersection at Highway 6 and US 278 and FD Buddy East Parkway and Highway 334. And Janice and Bart is going to take this one. Dr. Antonelli, you wanted this to be on the agenda.
And let me just start off by telling you where we are. I think most of you saw the petition from change.org. It has been going around for a few weeks. MDOT also has received a copy of the petition. In the petition, it makes several recommendations. They want to turn off the blinking yellow arrow function of this traffic signal. They want to extend the 55 mile an hour speed zone through the intersection. They want to create a 45, I believe it was a 45 mile an hour school zone and give some parameters on where that would be. And it also wants to add rumble strips on Highway 6 approaching the signal. We have reached out to MDOT to make sure that they are looking at those requests. In the last 2 weeks, us and MDOT have gotten the accident report and have been able to review the accident. And just want to let you know that MDOT is reviewing the petition. In the past year or 18 months, we have submitted a request to MDOT to reevaluate that speed through that area. So that is something that we were already working on. And it is up to MDOT to either allow us to make those changes. We can't go make them without MDOT. They can make them without us, obviously. And we're just here to have the discussion with y'all and see how you wanted us to move forward, or if you wanted us to do anything moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we have a petition that was signed by 6,000 people, which was initiated in Oxford. The signatures are from all over the country. I think everybody got one of these.
We did.
Yeah, and we had that tragic accident there, but besides that, a lot of people who signed this petition have been concerned about that intersection for a while, that it's kind of a surprise when you're approaching it that you find a traffic light. And I think, it's inside our city limits, and I know that it's a MDOT property and they can control it, but I think that we really have an obligation to put a little pressure on them to take a good look and see if some of these or other changes need to be made at that intersection to make it safer.
And I think we can do that. We could do it in whatever method you wanted. I mean, we can call them, and we have. I think Brianna has spoken to them as recently as today, maybe. But we could send a formal letter from the board. You just direct us on how you want us
I think we need a formal letter, and I want to make a motion that we send a letter to MDOT telling them that we feel very strongly, and the citizens of Oxford feel very strongly, that some attention be paid to that intersection to see what changes are warranted. It's close to a school, 2 schools, heavily traveled.
Schools, our
All
courts,
around.
county building,
Uh-huh.
everything.
Can I ask a question? Is there any particular things you want to pull out of the petition to request, or just as you said, just evaluate
Yeah.
any changes?
To consider these, but if there are others that they determine are needed, it would seem to me that some of these are quick, that can be done
Easy.
quickly, like rumble strips. And if, I understand that changing the signals is gonna take more time, but if there's anything that they will allow us to go ahead and do, they give us permission to go ahead and make those changes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Mark, all right, consider a request for Salah Restaurant to reinstate their outdoor seating license on a monthly basis. Just want to point out real quick is, one, this would be only 1 month left. So it's May the 16th. And then also that the parking spaces have been back in rotation since this happened. So, Mark, take it away.
Yeah, 401 South Lamar, Solo participated when we first started this from October to December, and then during the winter months, they terminated the agreement. And we currently have 5 restaurants that are participating. They're listed: St. Leo, Funky's, Blind Pig, Library, and Prowl Aries. Solo reached out and is requesting the use of those 2 parking spaces at the same rate, the $384.50 per month, to be used for a month. I mean, we told them that it was only going to be a month, and they wanted to bring the request to the board.
Okay.
Ask for your permission.
Question, Pope, with those parking spaces being back in rotation, does that give you a hiccup?
It does. To me, in order to grant this, you have to pull those out of the facility, declare the land surplus again, and then make a finding that this is the fair market value based on the August 2020 appraisal. I think that's a big chew, a big mouthful. I mean, I think that's a lot for y'all to have to do to make this finding based on a year-old or 9-month-old appraisal. And you cannot make the findings based on the emergency resolution that you made in your original licenses. That's no longer true. I think you have a residue of those that remain for that remaining license, and you made other findings related to that. But I think having pulled these back into the parking facilities, now to make the finding that you're going to pull it back out and grant the license, you have to make all the findings related to
The emergency.
yeah, well, not the emergency so much as that these are
Surplus.
When y'all, I think, have said publicly that parking spaces are filling up now that sports events are occurring, and you've got
100% capacity.
for them.
All right.
So when are these licenses expiring?
They can, they're on a month-to-month basis. They can be terminated anytime by the board.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're pulling up May 17th.
Yeah.
All of them.
May
There has to
17th.
be re-input into the system, which would require new findings for them.
Right.
my
That's right.
concern.
So,
What does the city have to do physically to get their parking spaces back around? I mean, we gotta put new ramps in, or?
We used the temporary ramps on that location. We didn't have asphalt ramps at that location, but we can't have a sidewalk in that location without taking those spaces.
Those parking spaces. All right, for in order this to happen, we need a motion. All right, hearing none, we'll move on. All right, number 34 is consider a request to close South Lamar for installation of a sculpture in the roundabout. Art.
You've got a memo in your packet that details the days and times. The planned installation for the sculpture in the roundabout would close South Lamar between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. on the 23rd of April, with backup dates using the same times on April the 26th and 27th. The sculpture will be lifted and placed on the base. The actual time the road is closed should be much less than 2 hours. We just want to make sure that we've got enough to be able to do it.
And what date again?
The April 23rd is the preferred date.
That's a Friday.
And then, for 2 hours, and then the following, the backup days are the 26th and 27th, which is next week, Monday, Tuesday.
And what time, what 2 hours?
9 a.m. to 11 a.m.
Okay, that's not too bad, but we need OPD there. You know, that's a ambulance route from the hospital to.
We will coordinate with OPD.
Okay.
What is their preferred day, Friday versus Monday, Tuesday?
That's just when they had the erection crew, the lifts and all scheduled. I don't know that there's any magic behind it there.
I think Saturday is, if it rains, Saturday is the International Sculpture.
That's it. Mm-hmm. No, that.
What a Friday of a ball game weekend.
It's not on your calendar.
They have said that. It's not on my calendar.
Okay, that's a heavily traveled area. You've got a popular breakfast restaurant there, right in that corner. A lot of people go through there.
It's totally your purview.
I wouldn't start before 9 o'clock.
Well, 9
for
o'clock.
schools.
9 to 11 is a good time.
And the artist actually went and watched the traffic, and that's why he wanted to do it between 9 and 11.
All right, I have a motion to accept that for April 23rd. I have a motion, I have a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 34A is discuss penalties on East Jackson Avenue Streetscape Project.
Incentives and penalties. In the contract as it is drafted, we have a $300 per day penalty for not completing the project in the timely manner and by the deadline in the contract. At the Visit Oxford meeting earlier this week, there was a discussion about could we offer incentives for early completion. Well, after looking at the $300 a day penalty, honestly, that doesn't seem stiff enough in the area that we're dealing with. So we started having the discussion, okay, if we went $300 a day penalty, we would go with $300 a day incentive. Had a conversation later this afternoon about moving that to $500 a day penalty and $500 a day incentive. And then I talked to Rick just before the meeting, and his thought was even more than that. So I think it's pretty easy to justify with the number of businesses down through there that there's with that road being closed, it could easily cost them $1,000 a day.
Sure.
So if you went with $1,000 a day penalty, I think that's pretty easily justified. Well, if you can justify $1,000 a day penalty, can you justify $1,000 a day incentive? Using that with a cap of something like 10% of the contract, we believe that this project's going to come in somewhere around $800,000. So obviously, there's no way they're going to finish it 40 days ahead of time. It means it only takes them 20 days to complete, or 30 days to complete. But that's just for your discussion. Do you want us to what penalties do you want on it, and do you want incentives, and if so, what?
So
what would you like to see?
realistically, the completion date is going to be when, Mark?
August 17th.
They get the thing done by August 1st.
That's $17,000 to get it done before everybody gets here. I mean, I think that's a.
And I think the penalty runs in the same way. If they're 10 days behind, it's about.
And we want, let me just stipulate, we want to make that calendar days, not work days where rain bothers us, but just strictly calendar days.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to weigh in on this, but they are not penalties. That's the whole point of liquidated damages. They're not punitive, they're not a penalty, they are actual damages we could justify that we would suffer. And I agree we would suffer, but I just need to say for the record, I've seen them challenge those boards call them penalties. They ain't a penalty, they're liquidated damages.
Okay, so.
Can we have escalated liquidated damages?
Yeah, I mean, you can
amend
it.
The first 7 days or so much, and then the next 7 days?
Well, that's the problem with liquidated damages. You got to be, if challenged, you have to be able to prove that actual damage occurred. So we didn't.
As you get more, I mean, as you get later in the month.
As you get later in the month, the more people are going to be here because school is starting.
If you get later,
students are back.
If you get to the football game, then you could just.
So I think it ought to be an escalated liquidated damages.
Well, Mark will need to make the finding tonight in front of you that whatever that escalation is tied to something. I mean, that's why people don't usually do that, because it gets awfully complicated.
And short of,
I think you tie it in, I think what you can do is tie it into move-in date for the university.
17th is when it's gotta be complete. Well, that's after move-in day.
Okay, so then after,
Football game would be the first thing that would come to my mind where you could justify it.
yeah, so that's September 9th. No, it's September 11th, first home football game.
Oh, wow, it's gotta be done by then.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I just moved $1,000 penalty out there because we were doing $1,000.
I think $1,000 penalty until the first football game, and then we're talking actual damages a lot more. I mean, it's not, to me, it's not $1,000 a day, it's.
We just gotta be able to quantify it. And, you know, really the only thing we have to go by is 2% in sales tax in that area. I'm not sure that by the time we open contracts and our deadline for putting out an addenda, that we can have that information for the sales tax and from.
And last year's numbers don't reflect what this year's numbers are.
Because you had to break it down for
You
that.
make a good faith estimate of it, that's okay.
Sure.
But it's gotta be based on something that can be pulled out of the air, or it looks like a penalty.
Okay, I think $1,000, I think you stick with $1,000.
And how about for the record, assuming between the city clerk's office and, COO, that they can determine that that is an appropriate damage post of deadline?
All right, do I have a motion to that effect?
Wait a second, question from you?
There was a statement about August 1st. To be clear, are we going to allow this incentive for the duration if they finish 6 weeks early? Is it 6 weeks of $1,000 a day up to the 10% cap? So it's not tied, August 1st is not the day.
No. I think August 17th is completion date. What we were saying was, if they get it done by August 1st, that's $17,000. That's yeehaw. It's worth
If they
paying
get it done by
$17,000.
July 1st, then you're $48,000. Well, that's probably still worth it, quite honestly. $50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
All right, so there, we got a motion on the floor. Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? 35 is consider executive session.
Move we consider executive session.
Have a motion, do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Board is moved to go into